to the foundation of the music, to all the godfathers who set it.
This, good afternoon, is Musically Speaking. They say I'm too young to soca. Michelle isn't here today, but we have the next best thing in studio. We have his mother, his manager, and so much more, Elizabeth Montano. And beside her in studio is noted writer, one of the significant contributors to the development of Jamaican music, Caribbean music. Yes, she has written for so many important journals, magazines, talking about Patricia Messina. Now, you know, my Italian is not the best, but we'll go on. And to my extreme right is a figure of Jamaican and international music, controversial at times, brilliant, but you got to hand it to her. She has weathered the storm in a male-dominated environment. Talking about none other than Maxine Stowe. So we're going to be talking about women in the music business, and that's a touchy issue, you know, because some people believe that women are underrepresented, that women have not been given their due as far as the music is concerned. Some people believe that women might not be supportive of others like themselves. There's so many issues that we wish to interrogate and to really discuss, and you don't have a better panel of women to discuss these issues. Musically speaking, today, a special day as we discuss women in music, different strands of the music business, different kinds of music. We're going to be hearing a lot today. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The first thing I would perhaps ask is your opinion on the level of representation of women in the music business. And the next question that would flow from that would be, have women been given their due in the music business? But I'll start with the question of, do you think women are appropriately, sufficiently represented in the music industry? I'll start with you, Liz, as you're the closest one to me.
Yes, good morning. It's a pleasure being here. Well, just this morning, I noted, or I told somebody, you know, I admire in Jamaica, for example, I find that the women are in charge in the music business. I find they have a lot of managers who are women and who are highly respected. In Trinidad, there are fewer of us, but I think that the women have represented themselves very well. And even if they don't want them, we are there, we are in their faces. And I think that we demand that respect. So I have never observed it as being, you know, women or men. I think I look at the strong personality, or as you are saying, when I look at Maxine, I just met her, but I could see the characteristic of a strong woman. And well, I know
Strength
Pat,
of a woman.
yeah, and I know Pat for many years. So it hasn't been a problem to me in the industry personally, because I go with what I have and I give it and I do it well, I excel, and if the men don't like it, well. But I've been successful for 41 years.
Yeah, and you know, that would bring me to another question, because somebody like you, Liz, are considered to be very strong and forceful, perhaps. just like Maxine. Do you think that this is an essential feature for women who are going to be successful in the music business? To be strong and assertive?
Is that for me or?
Well, for you and then for Maxine.
Yes, well, I think in everything you have to be assertive and you have to be strong. And I think that women, once they're given the chance, you find this characteristic or this personality will show up. But some women tend to sit back and be controlled or take that thing where this is a man's world. But then there are some women who just go forward and do it. And I think there are lots and lots of us out there in the music business. But in anything that you do, you have to be strong, you have to be assertive, you have to be resilient. And I think it takes a personality from young. A strong woman doesn't just appear, you know. So therefore, I think that once we socialize our girls from a very young age to be a strong, assertive person, then she will occupy a very important role in the society.
Yeah, Maxine, and then I'll go to Pat.
Yeah. Thanks again, Clyde, for having me on the Musically Speaking program. It's a very deep issue for me in the sense of, appreciating the larger picture, being that I think this is Jamaica, maybe the Caribbean is a deep patriarchal society. And the women don't, because in the music, as I think through, there hasn't been any real flowering of the women artists compared to men. When I look at the show posters, you barely see a woman, in the posters like Sumfest, and through the years, the women have been, as the artist, not really developed, the potential. In the business, I know that, certainly from my perspective with my uncle, it was his mother,
Miss Darlington.
Miss Darlington, that was the driver, for him. And I think even with Duke Reed, his wife,
Yes.
Lucille Reed,
Right.
on the business level, we certainly
they
have
weren't-
been
they
there.
weren't- they
Miss
weren't
Pat Chin.
But they weren't credited. Many of them were not
They're
credited.
not credited, but
sufficiently.
they did the work.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just because the stories have not been told. Because again, maybe the system of transmitting and writing is heavily male or heavily patriarchal, that the woman isn't recognized even when she does do the work and does have the achievements. So with myself, I went through the same thing in the music industry. I saw where, major female artists that I had signed were dominated by the male producers or male, friends, or just the way the recording industry occurred in Jamaica was very not good for the woman, like they were pressured and taken over even in their relationships. If they became successful, their partner, didn't support them. It became a very negative experience. I even looked at even the I3s when I saw the three major women in Jamaican music becoming the harmony singers for Bob Marley. It was, it was okay for people who say Bob Marley, but I didn't see them opening up as artists for Bob on the stage, like their actual careers, like a Marcia Griffiths, a Judy Mowat. I think for those years they were very, suppressed. So I understand why the question would arise about the role of the women in the industry and how they have been treated. I do understand that now there's a new crop of female artists. There's much more than earlier, and you have a personality like Protege, who
was a camp of women.
Who was a camp of women. So you directly see, you understand, someone trying to cut through the status quo, you know. So it's, you know, for me in the industry, as you said, you know, and as Elizabeth says, you know, I just have a naturally strong views and personality. And so I've never been stopped as a woman. You know, in fact, being a woman probably has assisted me in, you know, putting my points across, etc. But definitely within and I think it comes out of the, you know, our slavery background and a lot of things and nuances in our society, in our social structure that needs to be challenged.
There are a few questions that flow from what you and Elizabeth have said, but I want to have Pat address the issue of, you know, how you see the role of women in the music business, and whether you believe that they have been appropriately credited.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, Clyde, and good afternoon to your audience, and thank you for having me as part of this panel. I think it's gotten, you know, in my decades now of doing this and being involved in music on the journalism side, I think it has gotten better for women to get more of their due credit, but I don't see it as on a par with their male counterparts. I see a lot of, like, women's achievements are, in many cases, cast in what they did alongside a male figure. You know, as Maxine said, and which is such a great example about the I3s and Bob, you know, but these were not just backup singers, these were amazing female vocalists who had careers, especially Marcia and Judy, that had these extraordinary careers, but kind of became, you know, background. And granted, it was Bob Marley, so you'd want to be a part of that movement. I understand that, but I still see today that a lot of credit for women is, again, part of what they did related to a male rather than standing on its own. But I do see that from the 1990s up until 2023, it's gotten a lot better. Even back then, though, the early days, you know, I knew Maxine from the 1990s, her great work at major labels, Columbia Records, and helping to bring so many Jamaican artists to the fore. I knew Lady from the 1990s as well, and seeing Michelle's ascent throughout that decade. So right there, just two, you know, incredibly strong women in a space that is not necessarily, you know, embracing that the way it should. I mean, I remember going back decades, Pat Chin in her book says that, you know, oftentimes, because she handled the business side, she wasn't there selling the records, she was doing the books and, like, balancing the whole thing for
Vincent.
Yeah, and so it's like, but sometimes it'd be people on the phone that's like, I need to speak to a man. I can't talk to you. I need to speak to a man. But as they got to know her and say, hey, she really is running this whole thing, like, okay, you know, the trust begins. But I just don't see it yet on the par where it should be. But I am encouraged that it has gotten better. And I do see women in more diverse roles than when I started out. So it continues to grow, and it needs to continue to get better.
Yeah, but even as a writer, what would you say is the representation of women vis-a-vis men in terms of music journalism? How do you see that?
Yeah, I don't see, if you look at let's say, like the people who want to be more on the, what would you say, like the historical side and document and try to bring up these stories from, you know, before they were born, basically, or very early, things that they weren't necessarily a part of, but, you know, are fascinated by, like myself. But the majority of people doing that overwhelmingly are male. And it does seem like the male voice is kind of given a little more credibility. It's like, you know, I've even had it said to me, like, I think what you're saying is right, but I want to check it out. And inevitably, it's a man they go check it out with. It's never another woman, you know. So I would say that the more serious side of the writing is heavily male. Like the more, nowadays, I mean, when I started, of course, there wasn't social media, there weren't websites, there weren't pages, all these blogs that people will, talk about the news of the day, or like this latest scandal with name your artist, or this or that. You have, men and women doing that about equally, possibly a little bit more female in that realm. But in terms of the serious documentation of music, the book writing, let's trace the history of, as an example, Studio One or whatever. And of course, Lady being a great example of telling Machel's story as a female, as his mom, as his manager. But in that space of the real serious documentation, I think it's still very much a man's world.
I'm going to come back to the issue of how women artists are treated in the media, but I want to touch on something that Liz had spoken about and Maxine addressed. The question of representation, because Maxine, you represented few women in the business, and some would say you were in that, a very powerful positions in the industry. Why wasn't a Maxine Store, who is so strong on the advocacy for women, why weren't more women being represented by a Maxine Store?
Well, as I expressed, the underbelly of the production of the music is so harsh against women that even when I did sign and was on the level that I was operating on, that other part of their lives were so reductive or reduced through their relationship with men, whether it be producers or partners. It was hard to overcome. And I experienced in 3 or 4 instances, like, wow, if you can't change how the music is made and produced, it's gonna be it's gonna be hard for them to develop. So my overall idea of change in the music industry is also inspired by the women, by what happens to women, and how I understand the importance of women's voices, not just what they have to say, but even the melody, as an instrument, how important it is in the potential success of a genre. So I always felt that the women not being promoted is on a large scale is also a detriment to where the potential of the music can go internationally. Look at Rihanna, for example. You understand what I'm saying? Like, what a woman could do in how the popular culture is structured, there's a huge potential that's not able to be realized because the underbelly of how that woman, like I'd have to come off of the level that I was to come on the street, on that level to be a part of,
influence the
to
process.
be able to influence
Okay.
the process. Yeah.
Liz, you have a unique role in that you are a mother who managed your son. Tell me, how difficult was this? Because, you're dealing with some cross currents here. You're dealing with maternal instincts, and you're dealing with managerial imperatives. How did you manage to navigate that?
Well, first to begin, I always separate the two. I separate mother from manager. So it was quite easy for me. It was difficult for the public, but it was easy for me because when I was out there, as manager.
Let me stop you. Why was it difficult for the public? What do you mean it was difficult for the
Because
public?
I will explain it to you, because they couldn't separate momager from manager and mother, whereas we could. Because when I understood my role, when I was working for Michelle, he was my boss. So there was no question about my role or who should take orders. When I am home with Michelle, then I'm his mother. And then I am the shoulder that he would cry on, and then I will be the boss. So that was very clear to me. But some people had
It was very
problems
clear
with
to
it.
him too.
To him too. We understood it very clearly. And when people call me momager, I make it very clear to them. I'm a mother and I'm a manager. I'm not a momager. Because once we get the two things, you have a commingling there, then there's going to be that hazy line of, oh my God, why is he treating his mother like this? Why is he speaking to his mother? But he pays my bills. He's my boss. He pays me. Although he never pay me.
He never paid. All right. No, well, no, you learn. Liz never got paid.
One manager who managed his son asked me, Liz, what percentage do you take from Michelle to manage him? Because I want to know. I said, well, first, I don't take money from my son to manage him. But I know managers get 20%. So I manage Nappy and Patrice Roberts and all these young ones, but my main job was not that. My main job was education. I was teaching, and I believe in educating people. This is why, too, when people talk about not getting the opportunity as a woman, I find it a little difficult for me, because I grew up in a household of just women. So I never had to compete with a man. I had one sister, and I was very strong. And no man, no boy, no nothing could stop me. So this is what I think, like Maxine, you have to be strong.
One second. Let me just stop right there and take a break. This is powerful. Musically speaking, the Dan Dada himself, Mud Up, Maxine Stowe, you were responsible to a large extent for the internationalization of Supercat's career. Supercat is a genuine rude boy, bad man. How did you as a woman relate to a Supercat, a real Dan Dada? And did the fact that you were a woman help you in any way in negotiating your way with him?
So many memories were flashing across my head when the song was playing, in the context of how we were speaking, because that was also when I was working with Skengdon, establishing his label and studio out of Miami when this song was released. Eventually, that relationship led to the signing at Columbia Records. And I think at that time he was managed by Robert Livingston as well. And so I was just saying to myself, how much I enjoyed working with these alpha males as much as we're discussing, the role of women. But the respect that that came between them respecting me and for my work and what I contributed, and the relationship was, so high, and they have me in a high regard that, like I said, there's no problem. Like Elizabeth, I've had no problems in working with male artists and producers. It's more just as Elizabeth also said, what the public perceives is happening, how they may think, you're in a relationship, or, they filter it. It's how they filter it. And, that becomes kind of a, problematic for me. Even my career in the industry, same way, you know, oh, she's the wife of Sugar Minot or the niece of Clement Dodd or, you know.
So they figure you got bricks.
Breaks, right? But it's not that I'm an established businesswoman, established by my uncle, through my uncle, you know, and my, you know, international career, and entered the business in that way as an independent thinker. And even now, the work that I'm doing, you know, I'm associated with these men, but it's still me. That's my job now, actually, in my career, is to establish Maxine independent of all of this male male achievements and energies, you know.
Yeah, but you spoke of transitioning female artists as and their personal issues of domination in their private lives as a challenge. But you were a record company executive. You were in a number of different labels. I mean, Ghetto Youths and all of these things, with the Marleys. Apart from the female artists and that transition, what did you do in terms of creating the kind of infrastructure that would allow women to move through the system?
Well, certainly for
I'm
that.
not talking about the artists now.
I think maybe in general what I did for all artists, but it benefited women, is putting them with professional, pairing them with professional, whether lawyers or managers, to, you know, cut through the chase and just having, you know, woman-to-woman conversations with them. And I think economics is a big part of why they, and socialization, you know. I remember, I won't call the name, but I remember working with one artist that I thought was going to be huge, and couldn't break apart the socialization, how she was socialized, to not see herself, her self-esteem was very, very, you know, bad. And what I would have done different now is really putting them with therapists, like psychological therapists. That would have been an essential part of female development. That's what I would contribute.
No.
Now, like, insist that, you know, there's a psychological treatment to meet the environment that they're going into, and, you know, how to manage home or manage children or whatever. I think that's something that I would have included now in the development. But everything else that was done structurally was done for all the artists, meaning it was, because, you know, generally the artists coming from Jamaica and the region are, you know, need that kind of structure to come into the international market and be successful.
Liz, you're a smart, educated Caribbean woman, but do you think you had a challenge being taken seriously when you said that you were going to be managing an artist, especially your son?
As I say again, I never had a problem. And going back to what Maxine was saying, and this is my story, this is my idea how it should be. You have to educate people. You have to make people be conscious. And you have to make them feel good about themselves, not when they are adults, but when they are very young. Whether they be male or female, it doesn't matter. I never looked at it from that male or female point of view. I look at it, what you want to do, where you want to be, and how could I get you there. And just as Maxine could get there, Pat could get there, and I could get there, you could get there. Because I tell my children, you could be great just being an ordinary person. And this is how I taught Michelle to be great. Look at all the great people. They came from nothing. right? But maybe how they were socialized. And again, because of suicide, the society, how it looks at a woman or a man, the woman take up a certain position. You have to be subservient. The man had to be macho. The man mustn't cry. So we created the male and female difference. But as I said, luckily for me, maybe, I grew up in a home of only women. So I never had to battle with men, but I had to battle with being strong, being out there, achieving. And with that, I led. And this is what we have to teach our girls, and we have to instill certain values in them, because even when I hear Maxine describe about personal relationships, some of us stay, for example, in abusive relationships because we feel we can't do better. We have no choice. We always have a choice. The only thing we have to do is stay the way the Lord created us and die. Other than that, we have to work on change, on educating people and pulling them out of this thing where man is greater or woman is better. No, it's what you could give to the society. Because I will fight a man, I wouldn't fight him. He might beat me, but I will match him in terms of intelligence and knowledge, and most importantly, I am going to make sure that I'm ready for the task ahead. So I am sorry, I have never noticed the world from a man-woman perspective. It's always what I could bring to the table. And I could see 10 men in front of me, and I know I come in there and I'm coming strong.
No, and I've seen you in public forum. I mean, you come on strong. Pat, the question of representation in the media, do you think that there is a standard for women, how they are represented, as opposed to how men are represented? Do you think that maybe women are held to a stricter standard than men in terms of how they are represented in the media?
Most definitely. I think there, if we're talking about entertainment media artists, today people are so image conscious and understand that's across the board, but it's even harder on females, like, don't go past a certain weight, don't, your hair should be a certain this, your body should be a certain that, and also to female dressing, like you don't see male singers half naked when they perform, but it seems like for most females, that's what they believe they have to do to get attention, to have a hit song. And, in many cases, it's just so sad to see so many women follow this trend, because there's, plenty it has worked very well for, and they've made tons of money and became very famous, but there's so many that it just has not worked out for, and to see them just compromise their identities, or maybe just buy into like this false narrative, as opposed to challenging it, as opposed to saying, I have talent, I have good songs, I have a good presentation on stage. That should be enough. Let's work with that, and to surround yourself with people who will encourage you that, yeah, that is enough. Because, for every woman we see half naked out there, or 3/4 naked, there's an Adele who's selling, one of the best-selling artists of our time, who has been fully clothed doing it. So it's not necessarily that to buy into that. And it just seems like another way of, well, it clearly is another way of objectifying a woman. And and it's not even, it's beyond just the dressing. It's to say the least, the provocative things they do on stage that, it's just sad to see so many young women buy into this, that this is what they need to do to have a career in entertainment, because there are examples to the contrary, but there are not enough examples in, if you're looking at who the top artists are, there aren't enough examples, and there aren't enough people with that belief to encourage the talent, say, yeah, your talent, we have to build upon your talent. Image, sure, you can look, look as good as you can look, of course, but that's done through health and exercise and how you take care and what you believe about yourself. So that disparity between men and women is very strong, as represented in the media. And I just wish more people would surround young female artists and say, you don't have to go that route. If you choose to, that's on you, but you don't have to. If you have talent, you have songs, you're willing to work hard and get better and improve at what you do, you don't have to go that route to have a sustainable career. It doesn't mean you're going to be, Adele or Beyonce or whatever, but, you can have a very sustainable career.
I want to touch on the issue of solidarity amongst women in the business. Do you think that women are sufficiently supportive of their kind in the music business? And I want to get from each one of you. I don't know if you want to start, Liz?
Well, I haven't worked with many women, and there are not many women in my field in Trinidad and Tobago. Very few. But I believe I am looking at the Jamaican experience.
Yes.
And I keep saying it. Why do the male go to the women? I find that there are so many women. I'm looking at Rita Marley. I'm looking at Sharon Burke. I'm looking at Maxine. And what is it? What is it? Why they go to the women? I don't know how the women work together. But I keep admiring, I say, and mainly it is not young women they go to, They go to women with experience. And I remember just seeing all these women coming to Trinidad who are managing, where I am like maybe one of a kind.
Yes,
I don't know how many.
Yes.
I'm an odd
woman out.
And maybe because of how I bold face. But so I work with everybody, and whether you're a woman, as I say, I have a different kind of outlook because I don't judge you like that. And I work with everybody, and everybody work with me. And I always have a positive. But as I say, I admire how I see the woman in Jamaica. It stands out to me every time I see is a woman is the manager and woman. And I don't know what it is. I can't explain.
Yes, Miss Kemp, Claudette Kemp and these people. Yes.
Yeah, there's so many. I can remember some long time when we were working with some
Walsh.
of the other artists. I can't
Janet
remember.
Davidson.
So all women and full women, and I don't know how you all get along together, but I just know that you all up.
Yeah,
you're
because that's
definitely.
because
definitely
the representation is one thing. The question is the kind of support that they provide to each other. That's what I would want to get from all of you.
Maybe
Maxine,
because there's so many women in the business. But one thing that Maxine was saying that I wanted it again, we go back, where she said she was working with a female artist, and because of her self-esteem, she wasn't able to get out there. So it comes back again. Everything, you are the one that is responsible for you, right? And if you have a low esteem, you have to find some way, or somebody have to try to help you, because if it doesn't come from in here, nobody could solve it for you, man or woman. But we need to build our girls and our girls before they're in music, so that we don't really, I don't really like to hear when people say, I'm being oppressed, I'm being suppressed, come on, man, show up what you got. And that's just my take. But I admire Jamaican women.
Yeah, Maxine, what is your take on what Liza said? Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm aware of several, even though I've not been involved, but I've been aware of several female organizations or attempt at, females in the industry organizing themselves in an association and or, trying to keep shows, together and band together. I haven't been involved with any of them for reasons that I can't even think of, having a reason to not being there. But I have been observant, of it. But again, because the industry is so male driven, even as Elizabeth is saying that she meets all these women who invariably are managing male artists, you know? And sometimes maybe the women don't get together because the male artists are not themselves together. So they're highly competitive, you know, so the not coming together is not really about the women on that level. It's the male are extremely, you know, they're not getting together. So how are you going to, you know, unless there's a major issue, you know, bringing it together. So I think there is an issue with the female, you know, across the board. And
You mean in terms of providing support for
Each other.
for each other?
for each other, yes, because the female artist doesn't exist, you know, and there's no female oppression of managers. I don't see the management of by the females as being negative, because the males, you have a great relationship with the males that you are managing, or, you know.
Mhm.
So there isn't anything happening there.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I haven't experienced that throughout my whole experience. I can't say, okay, there was a male artist.
Yeah, but I mean, because Liz referred to it from very early about the preponderance of women in management in Jamaica. What do you think accounts for this? What about the Jamaican woman or the Jamaican music industry?
Well,
which
all of the
seems-
Jamaican women that Liz and I am aware of, they're all strong women, very strong. They're very opinionated. They're very
very
you
very
understand what I'm
aggressive.
saying? And I don't know. I mean, Liz made a comment a couple times that she grew in a home without male. Now, a lot of us grow in homes without males because, or we the women have to be the mom and dad, or if a dad is there or a male is there, he's not there, you know, 24/7. You know what I mean? So it still comes to these different survival mechanisms that we have that's coming from something else that's going on in the society between the male and the female. You know, because I can tell you the majority of artists that I've worked with come from a female head of household. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm searching for answers, and they go into a well that's very deep into how the society is structured. And, you know, I have intentions to speak about it as how it's even, how our legacies are being challenged, because, you know, invariably the artist comes from a household or has children with 10 different women, or, you understand? And so the transfer of the estates is full of, you know, challenges coming from the same well, you know, where all of these things, challenges emerge from. So, yeah, so it's good to speak about it, and it's good to interrogate it so that we understand how we survive and how we project, and why we have to be strong women, because our mothers had to be strong, or we're coming from these households of, you know, strength, and we all have sons. You understand what I'm saying? And so I could see a lot of sons looking for mothers.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Or looking for that
maternal instinct or
figure, because the mother applies justice, and the mother has to be equal even amongst competitive kids. And you have a different point of view than a male. A male is strict competition, whereas a female is a more nurturing.
Is that correct?
Compassionate.
Because the women who have been successful in music are seen as very strong and
strong nurturers.
but strong nurturers.
Nurturers.
Oh, yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? But
so
the
it's not-
nurturing
it's-
is not male or female. It's a genetic almost, because once you have to take care of, like I was saying, a family, like you have 4 children, it's 4 different people. You know what I'm saying? You could be, so you have to deal with difference and diversity.
Thank you, Maxine. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we're gonna talk about the question of legacy and how that is dealt with, musically speaking. Unmistakably, Diana King. Maxine Stowe, you were bound up in Diana King's career while you were at Columbia Sony. Or Sony Columbia. Tell me a little bit about what kind of challenges. I mean, this was your most successful female artist. Tell me what kind of challenges, if any, you experienced with this particular project.
Well, firstly, Diana was actually a harmony background singer for Shabba Ranks. When I independently got a tape, I forgot who, I think he recently died out of Ocherius.
Barry O'Hare?
Barry O'Hare, right, because she had been doing some work with City Heat.
Mm-hmm.
And independently, I had liked that, but then I saw her on she was touring with Shabba as a background singer. And actually, as I was promoting her to be signed, my boss, the head of A&R, brought up a tape of her with Shabba, kind of whining on her. And he said, this is who you want us to invest in. This doesn't look good. So I had to be very focused on getting her signed,
So
move away
it
from
would
that.
not have happened based on
Just
the perception.
the perception that how could she be a star when she's allowing herself to be demeaned in this manner. So it just rebounds back to the basis of our industry and how women, you understand, are treated. And she was an instance where I said I would have provided her with access to a good manager, David Sonnenberg, lawyer, and got her moving. I would have loved her. One of the critiques I would have had about my experience with her was she kept looking back at Patra and the success that it was perceived that Patra had, and I wanted her to just sing, so the music that she put out, she has to do.
You think there was a rivalry?
No, there was no rivalry. I thought, when I signed her, she was on the level of a Mariah Carey. Both of them.
She's a great singer.
She's a great singer. So I wanted to develop her straight. You understand? Like, she's just a singer out of Jamaica that could go to the moon. The same thing that I saw happen with Rihanna. You understand what I'm saying? Like, she comes from Barbados, the Caribbean, whatever, but she has a style of singing that makes her competitive with the global pop artists. But she kept looking at what was happening, with Patra, and you know what I mean? It was that struggle. I'm just going through the experience that I had, and where I thought that she should be free to just sing. I feel that the Jamaican music artistic base can give you the culturally defined singer, but you have the potential to just go crossover. You understand? Like, that's to me the, what we don't tap into. Yes, the cultural prominence is there, but the opportunity based on where we are and what we know and how we're, even on the tourism circuit, North Coast, a lot of us sing over the international songs, for a career, and it's just a channel that I
Yeah,
felt
because that's where Diana started. She started on North Coast.
on North Coast.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, that's what I missed about the education, as Elizabeth said, about, even me being groomed by my uncle, Clement Dodd, and Studio One, where he as a record company, produced every music. He produced gospel, he produced jazz, he produced, all aspects of music. And most of us as Jamaican creatives in the music don't have that freedom, We think, we have to be the next Bob Marley, or, we have to be what is pushed on us. But we have established such an innovative space here that is not being exercised because of, the limitations that have come because of what is deemed successful by others,
I want to talk about the issue of legacy, because here we have three highly educated and accomplished women, and the question of what do you do in terms of engaging posterity in what has happened in the music, maybe from a woman's perspective. Liz, you have written a book. Tell us a little bit about what your project is about.
Well, my project is about, again, my life story, or my work with my children, and mainly with Michelle. That book that I wrote came from...
Just tell us the title of the book. And
the title of the book is The King of Soca.
King of Soca. Right.
And the subtitle is The Ultimate Insider.
That's your view.
That's
you.
Me. I'm the ultimate insider. Reveals how Machel Montano became one of the most popular soca artists in the world.
One of the most
popular,
outstanding artists.
Well, I say one of the most popular. I don't want to be boasty.
All right, you don't want to boast. All right.
Yeah, and I did this. The book came from my thesis. Like, I'm a perpetual student. I have been studying from ever since, I started my tertiary education here in Jamaica at Mona, where I did my certificate in education and then my degree in education, and I went back to from being a teacher to a guidance counselor. And then, I so love academics, I went and studied. I had no experience at all in the business of music, no background in music. So I did a postgraduate diploma in ACM, which is entertainment management. Mm-hmm. And I did so well, bit me again, and I went back and did my master's in philosophy and cultural studies, and I graduated in 2018. And then my thesis was based on the idea of people feel that when you mix your music with other genres, you take away that authentic feeling or the authentic substance of your genre. And I wanted to prove to them that it was different because it enhanced. And I had the experience of that enhancement by, over the last 25 years, Machel worked with 23 Jamaican artists. And we work with hip-hop, we work with EDM. Machel was one of the first people who mixed house music with soca, and we did all that, and it enhanced our music. So this was the basic idea of my thesis. But then it was very academic, and I always believe in knowledge and believe in sharing knowledge. There's no sense I go into my grave with all the knowledge that I have. So I wanted it to fit for the man in the street, for the young artist, for the academic. So therefore I decided to write a book because I wasn't allowed to put pictures, to put newspaper articles, and to put the color. How could I write about Caribbean culture without using color? And again, I wanted it to come from a teaching perspective. So therefore, I decided to convert it. And luckily or unluckily or fortunately or unfortunately, the pandemic came in 2020. And I sat down. I took 2 years and I converted it. And I converted it in a way that it could inspire young people. It could inspire women, men to understand that you have to believe in yourself. And once you do certain things, you are going to be successful. And things like if you have integrity, you work hard, you sacrifice, you take risks. But my son didn't get it just like that. He was taught, both my sons were taught, both by my husband and I, certain core values. And when I look at my children now, when people say, oh, good, you must be proud of Marcus, he's a captain with Caribbean Airlines, and your son is a big... I say, no. And I keep telling this story over and over. I say, I am proud when I look at my children and even the girls and boys who I influence, like Patrice Roberts and Farmer Nappy. You know, I feel proud to see that the values that we have inculcated in them manifest in them as men. So this is why I feel that if I had 20 women to deal with when they were young, they would be all successful, because I will show them how to do it. And in this book, this is revealed, not as a Bible, but just to show them how one little black boy from the country who started with nothing was able to reach where he is. He might not be a Rihanna as such, because if you really follow Marshall's history, Marshall is a man when he's going forward, because he was signed to Atlantic, and he sees things that he doesn't like. Again, he following in the footsteps of his mother. He walks away from it. No matter how big it may seem, he walks away from it. And therefore,
I want to stick a pin there, because I wanted to talk about that Atlantic situation and the relationship of Caribbean artists with some of these mainstream labels in the United States and some of the challenges. For example, Calypso and, well, to a lesser extent, soca tends to be more, I don't want to say parochial, but it's more local in terms of its focus at times, dealing with topical issues, sometimes that might not translate or cross over that readily. Did you see that as a challenge with Atlantic and the relationship with Michelle?
well, I think that that was not a challenge for us. The challenge was the American wanted to convert us to their way. They wanted Michelle to become somebody else. And the thing is, Marshall is accustomed creating. He's a producer. He studied to produce and record, right? And they wanted him to take things that they were taking from another place. And Marshall was accustomed creating. So they were not giving you that creative license, you know, where you come in with that experience. So they wanted him to change who he was. They didn't understand the music. And we decided, one, that Marshall decided he didn't want to go that way. But unfortunately for us, or fortunately I always say, the time came when Atlantic Records was changing at the time and going and merge with somebody else. And when they letting people go, last come goes first. Right? So our challenge was never really with the material that Marshall sang, because Marshall will sing anything. Like if you look at his music, he will sing the local music, but he will talk, and his thing is love and unity, right? So no matter what he does, this is what is there in the music. So that wasn't really our problem.
So you're saying, because you said that in your thesis, you think that interfacing with these major labels and these mainstream outlets is a positive thing, you think for the music, but you specifically says that Michelle had an issue in that they were trying to change him.
But I'm not talking about labels.
You were
because
talking
I'm
no.
not talking about long time. Labels were important, where the labels will choose what song they wanted to be hits and what artists
okay.
they want to be hits. What I'm talking about is working with people. We have worked with musicians and artists, you know, from Shaggy to Red Rat to Beanie Man to... You think about, you call a name, and Marshall has worked with them. Marshall has worked with people in hip-hop, in Spanish music, Pitbull and everything. And this is what he loves. He loves to work with other people, bring those people to our culture and our music and let them take us. We don't care about the major labels, because the major labels tend to have, remember, they're looking to make money for themselves, right? And sometimes the artists get the break, but they are exploited, and when they leave with nothing, right? Fortunately for us, we built from the bottom, and we never looked at the major label. We looked at the music.
So you looked at collaboration in
with,
terms of
with
personal people.
Yes, with
Okay, so
right,
it's more
from the
from
bottom
up.
going up.
Okay.
If you take it like that, it's from top going down. If you feel the artist is bottom up, we don't look at that. People.
Right.
It's people you have to work with.
Right, rather than labels.
Rather than labels.
Good.
And Marshall's career started in Jamaica. 5 years he was going to school here. Well, no, he was 2. And he lived here and he went to school here. So he was kind of introduced to the music, I think, between 2 and 5 while he lived here.
You were going to say something.
I just wanted to chime in about Marshall's career. How, you know, it's extraordinary in terms of its success, but its path to that success is the real extraordinary story, an extraordinary Caribbean music success story. You see, there are other soca artists who have been signed to major labels. Rupee, Kevin Little both had deals with Atlantic, put out records, and they just kind of died after the, you know, I mean, there's Rupee especially is a very good artist and has some real nice songs, but in terms of the label actually advancing his career, it really didn't do anything. He had the song was a big hit, Tempted to Touch, when they took him on, so it wasn't even like they helped to make it much bigger than it was. I think basically it was just a video they might have paid for. But Marshall's story, yes, the collaborations have been very strategic, all about broadening the parameters of soca, but also the reinvestment in that brand, that Machel Montano brand, being able to, you know, come from starting as a child and opening up for...
Being too young to soca.
Yes, and opening up for the great Calypsonians, Lord Kitchener and Sparrow and Shadow at Madison Square Garden, then coming, you know, getting a little older and studying recording engineering and saying, but you know, this soca thing, it seems like it's for older people. I want to make it for my generation, you know, because I'm not, I know he has said this in many interviews that, you know, I'm not seeing people my age at my shows, like this is something wrong here. And then I think that's really where that tinkering with the sound began, and it just continues on to this day. But to be able to, in terms of record sales, the numbers might not be these big, impressive numbers, but in terms of, and I know I mentioned this the other night at the book launch, like for an artist from the Caribbean to be able to sell out the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and previously sell out Madison Square Garden, Radio City Music Hall, these are tremendous achievements, but the Barclays Center is 19,000 people capacity, and Liz can verify, Eddie, where you looked behind the stage, as seats practically touching the ceiling, there were people in them. It wasn't like, you know, well, you know, it's a good turnout, but it was, you just really couldn't fit any more people in there. And, you know, it's such a tremendous achievement. And to see that they've done it all, you know, basically on their own. You know?
And I think, again, the thing there is people. And working with people, not with the labels or what. And I think Marshall's strength is how he connects to people. And I go back again, and I want to stress, I might sound redundant or repetitive, but we definitely socialize our children to be like that. If you notice, Marshall is never by himself. He believes in team. We send him to study, we send somebody else. We going somewhere, we take people, we invite people, and it's all about people. So Marshall's success, in addition to him being smart and studying, and I don't know how much is talent, but we have been able to, or Marshall has been able to connect, to reach with the people, and always from that view of being, of love and of unity and bringing people together. And I remember from the age of 10, he was doing an interview. And when they asked him, so what's your mission? And he says, I want to work with Caribbean artists and do a lot of collaborations and to make the music more palatable. And he's going on and this child. And I said, where is he getting this from? Where is he getting a 9-year-old? And I have a record of it still. Where is he getting it from? It all came from what he learned, because he never go anywhere. He was always with us and so young. So that I think, and I want to go back to Maxine again. Please, with whatever we do, and going back to women, you have to teach our women to be strong, because I want to put an example. In the Calypso world, one of our biggest artists, Calypso Rose, that's a woman.
Punta. Play with Punta.
Yeah, she's a woman, and she's so old now. I think in her 80s, and she was signed to a French label, and she's been touring, and she's been very
Michel.
with Jean-Michel, and
Yes.
and she has been very, very successful for many years. She won Road March, she won the Calypso Monarch. And
Brilliant performer.
And she took it places where the men couldn't go. So that I think that it is something that we have to, admire.
I want to talk about the consumption patterns in Caribbean music vis-a-vis what we would call mainstream pop music. And I'm riffing on what Pat noted about how Michelle was able to pack Madison Square Gardens, pack the Barclays Center. Bob Marley is perhaps not listed in the top 200 best sellers in terms of albums. He would not be. But the influence of these artists far exceed anybody else. In other words, our music and the way it has been consumed has been different from the way it has been consumed elsewhere. Live performances has been the lifeblood. They've been the lifeblood of our music, as opposed to the other forms where the recorded side of the business was the driver. And I think that in itself caused a lot of confusion in terms of how the record labels perceived success for our artists. But I want to go to Maxine, because Maxine, Liz has said some things that would be of concern to Maxine, and I'd want to hear her views on that, where Liz is saying that basically the labels might have dropped the ball in terms of not understanding the music of the Caribbean. I don't know, as somebody who was so integral in that process, maybe you can shed some light on that, Maxine.
Well, I think that the labels are just labels. And it's the underlying instances that, bring the music in contact with the labels, because as Pat Machino has said, even with the soca, there are already hits coming from the marketplace. Generally, that marketplace is our diaspora in these major, metropolitan centers. It's how I kept thinking, it's amazing listening to Elizabeth and her story of Michelle, whereas my experience of the same story, you know, I would have been put to the fire, or, you know, in Jamaica, that I was diluting the music. You know, the same kind of, I was thinking about, you know, because Clyde is a great promoter of me doing my book.
You have to.
You
You
know?
have to do that.
You know, but
Maybe I could influence him.
sorry, no, I'm saying that it has to be done for all kinds of reasons, but certainly Elizabeth's reason and content makes it more imperative that even in the lineup of what she has presented, you know, it's great context for what I experienced.
No, I want to go, because this is very important. I mean, the accumulated wisdom and experience that you have is something that should be codified and well documented. Let me just take a break and come right back. UFO, described as perhaps the two greatest performers out of the Caribbean, Michelle Montana and the Dr. Beanie Man. Well, Liz is mother of Michelle, you know, and manager. I happen to have had the privilege of managing Beanie Man at some point. Yes, quite an experience. I mean, great Caribbean talent, great world talent. You know, you can't question that. But Maxine, you were telling us a little bit about your book and my interest in your book project.
Yes. Every day it grows more burdensome to make sure it occurs. But certainly to, you know, just listening and experiencing Elizabeth, it seems that it, and both her and Miss Pat's book, recent book, and experience of her on the stage, promoting it, it really bears down on me that my book is necessary, even for me to learn about myself and what has been achieved, you know, throughout. But certainly, listening about Michelle's experience, I'm just thinking about Bad Bunny, you know, the reggaeton artist who is at the top of the world without also a label, you know, and to an extent, I think Burna Boy, I don't see him really being driven by a label.
Are labels becoming irrelevant?
Well, labels themselves are changing. I don't know that they may own other parts of the process.
Oh,
you know, whether they own
360,
YouTube or they own these other Spotify platforms. I don't know how ownership goes on those levels in terms of those channels and what's happening. But certainly that the audience, I'm interested to understand, you know, certainly with Burna Boy, and to, you know, I haven't studied Michelle, but I see where they're packing out these major centers that are also major diaspora cities, you know. So the cities themselves, you know, how they're made up, the individuals, like the globalized audience then, you know, is, and the new technology, etc., is creating a really interesting space. And what I do know is I keep thinking, well, Burna Boy has 200 million, you know, Nigerians
Yes, that
to
is
bolster him, and Bad Bunny has a whole continent, you know, where reggaeton is like the second, I think, the most unifying genre across all the Latin American countries and their diaspora here, you know. And so I've learned, you know, in understanding Jamaican music, that we also became international through our diaspora. You know, population being
Britain,
descent,
particularly in Britain
and in
and
New
United
York
yes.
and Miami, etc., that I would like to understand what's happening there as we explore our relationships, that's why I said labels are just that, labels. I've come to understand that the music industry is driven by the recording industry, which is the companies that make the technology, and they're actually advancing and creating new patterns of consumption and distribution that we're just software for. We're just content. And I've been learning over the last maybe year or two to recognize that power. You understand? And what is our relationships to that power, the recording industry, different from the music industry? Because I didn't even know it was two different things. But I began to respect, oh my gosh, the Deccas and the Sonys and the Apples are actually redefine. They have always been the definition of where we go and what we do.
Well,
you know what I mean?
If you want a classic case, it would be Sony, who was making the Vio and all of these computers, and they owned Columbia, which the music from Columbia was being ripped on these machines.
Yeah.
You talk about dialectics.
It's fascinating.
It's a fascinating way of how capitalism and
all
how,
of that works. And where we are, which is why we have to have knowledge and education and self-esteem to understand, our relationship, and that we don't feel oppressed by the wrong things. Mm-hmm. And we're there reacting to some things and wasting our energy when we should be targeting the arrow at particular, bullseyes, instead of BS.
Yeah, well.
I'm just saying this has been a great inspiration to myself, just this interchange that has occurred here today, to say, Can
I say something?
Yeah, yes.
To Maxine. Well, Maxine, in my old, teaching ways, everything I do, they always say I come from a teaching point of view, But one of our things is we really, really would like to unite Jamaica and Trinidad, mainly because, two leading islands in the Caribbean, and we have, as I said, a great affinity to Jamaica, and we have worked a lot. So I would like, if in any small way, that I could possibly inspire you, because to me it was easy. And I see you are the same thing like me. You have it here in your head. Mm-hmm. So at least once you have it in your head, you could start to write it, and then you can start to follow what are the other things to put together. But I think that you have the content. Mm-hmm. And again, you just don't let it be a burden, right? Just delve in it. And if you want, if you're so brave, you could always reach out to me, because this is what we're doing now. Like Marshall is now attending the university full-time doing his master's. And his whole thing is not about going out there and performing or records, but he says he wants now to represent his culture from the perspective of knowledge. So when he talks about it, he's talking from knowledge. Because when he talk about carnival and he talk about where it's from and all this, you see that there's a different story out there in the real or in reality to what we know. Mm-hmm. So that he too is on this journey of learning some new knowledge that he could share. So when he talks from that perspective. So I too would like, if I can in any small way.
Yes. Actually, when I saw the video just a while ago with Beanie and Michelle, that's what I thought. I was saying, and hearing the story of Michelle, I said, well, how could this now become institutional? Not just that it was an experience, collaborative, but how this could become institutional. Because I also, in my travels, have worked with Eddie Grant. And yes, and know what his appetite has been and perspective on Jamaican music, and wanting to create a strong Caribbean alliance. But it's like CARICOM, You know, the competition between the countries, the ego of the countries to not even come together on, you know, like certain major issues that would work well, but something stops structurally, which I know I don't want to go into it now, but but there, when I saw it a while ago, I was like, you know, because numbers mean a lot, and the Caribbean music coming together in a, even as big as reggae is, the coming together of the people and the success and the stories would still make a bigger impact. Just like how you say he's going to school, to what he says, to channel it now through institutional authority. So other than just a creative authority, he's mixing it now with an institutional authority to have that bigger breakthrough and impact, you know?
Yeah, that's a remarkable way of looking at it and of addressing the issue of growth, because here it is, he has the practical dimension. He's a great performer, producer, you know what, you name it. But yes, there is now, he wants to now deal with the analytical and move it to another level. Phenomenal. Pat, you have written a lot. So I don't know, would it be a collection of articles? Would it be now that you're going to do something just different in terms of just looking at the music business? I have been encouraging people to write, not just Maxine. I've been involved in writing with Copeland Forbes and his stories about his journey, which is a fantastic one, and his Reggae My Life is now out, and I think it is selling, and I think we need these stories, because as Liz says, I mean, first of all, I mean, if you are going to allow other people to tell your story, sometimes it's going to be problematic. You have to have people who are immersed in what you're doing and who love what you're doing, and so I think that is some of these stories need to be told, and Liz has moved on, and now we're talking about Pat, in terms of moving on with your recollection of, you know, what the music industry has been like for you.
And of course, that's an idea, or ideas along those lines have been in my head for a while now. But I am so consumed day to day with like writing stories about things that are happening, a record that comes out.
The first take of history.
Or, a short form history of some aspect of the music, whether it's, someone who played on sessions in the 60s who was overlooked, whether it's, someone who's just coming to the fore now that I think deserves greater recognition that maybe they're only getting now. Yeah, the whole spectrum from what's happening right now to what happened before I was born, like all of that interests me. And it's just so, I mean, every day I'm writing, every day I'm working on something, and I guess I just haven't taken the time to really say, okay, whatever this book is going to be, formulate it, figure it out, and then just get to it. I mean, it isn't even so much the, I know the time constraints, because like I say, I spend all my day pretty much writing, then I'm gonna have to carve out another part of my day to just write that, but of course it's possible. But I think because I've been just so busy, just keep working, doing these stories, that I just haven't thought far enough ahead to like, what form do I want the book, when and if I do write it, to take. It's not like, because I wouldn't necessarily want to base a story around my journey and Caribbean music. That's just not for me. For both of these esteemed women, I can see I've read Liz's book. I can't wait to read Maxine's book. And they've lived very unique lives within music. And Lady, your book is very specific, obviously, with Machel. Maxine, you've had such a multifaceted career. And I mean, I know you from the 90s, that whole rise of dancehall in the U.S. Like you are such a pivotal person. That alone could be its book. That's
the problem.
Exactly. You have your Cox and Dodd affiliation, your uncle, your Sugar Minot, Bunny Wailer. Just these. Any one of these could be a major book unto itself. But for myself, I just don't see me as the center of a book. I just don't see it. That's just not me anyway. But I've been approached to write a couple of things about specific artists. I've considered those, and if they are in fact really serious, I could see me going down that road more so than just something centered around myself.
Okay. Reflections. Looking back, and this is going to be a question for all three of you. Well, the two last questions. In terms of your recollections, what would be the most poignant thing for you in terms of all these years you have been working in the business, Liz? What lesson that you would take away, that you would basically commend to young people who want to get in the business? What is perhaps the most poignant lesson you have?
Well, what I think, looking back at Machel's journey, I think that Machel was lucky that he had a very strong support system in both my husband and myself. In that, I think maybe because we were teachers. So I think that an artist needs support. And sometimes I think it is even better if you could get the support of your family, although sometimes that doesn't exist. But your family doesn't have to be a biological family, but it has to be people who are interested in your vision and your mission to work with you. That's important, because I see a lot of artists and young people sometimes are led to suicide or are led to give up. Like I read the very sad story. I looked at the very sad story of musical youth. And I realized that this was their problem. They didn't really have people with that vision or who shared their vision, because their parents were not there, and as I said, it doesn't have to be a parent, but somebody who is really interested in your welfare and in your career.
But you have to concede, though, Liz, that Machel, and you said it, that he's lucky, because in most instances you don't have the coming together of the kind of skills that you brought to the table.
But I didn't have any skills.
Well, you had an aptitude. You certainly had an aptitude for certain things. And, I mean, in most instances, artists don't benefit from that. I mean, people will tell you, don't have your relatives manage you.
Well, this is what I'm saying. It does not have to be. Family doesn't mean blood, blood relative.
But even your friends, people tell you don't.
Not friends, not necessarily. You have to look for people, because I am saying that maybe a lot of people don't succeed because they do not have the support system. So that is one. So therefore, they can't see their way. Some people don't get the opportunity, like Rihanna, for example. Rihanna was discovered by chance. Rihanna was performing in a school show, and somebody was there, and she could sing, and they took her. And she got that opportunity, but not all of us have that opportunity, and not all of us can do it on our own. So therefore, we need that person. Maxine is one of those people. She may have, I'm sure she wasn't family to any of these people that she helped succeed, but she shared their vision and she delivered the goods. So I'm saying one of these things is we have to have that support system from family, whether it be blood family, whether it be friends, whether it be strangers, but those people who care for you. That is one of my main things. And then again, I go back on the thing about values, core values, developing that strength, that ability to work hard, that ability not to be afraid to take risk, self-esteem. And again, I would look for the opportunity where I could, in my old age, I'm 73 years of age in November, where I could, impart this kind of thing, let's say in young girls or in youths, because sometimes some of us are so, entrenched in our ways that it's hard to change. But I would like to be part of things like this. And we're looking at it from a Caribbean point of view, because if we in the Caribbean, and I want to leave this, if we leave this with you all, if we in the Caribbean could come together as a force, we will be very, very, it's something that they will have to, reckon with. We just have so much to offer, but we never come together. We tried it in Federation, and we didn't succeed.
1 from 10 leave not.
Leaves not. And then you see in sport, we could come together in sport, we could come together in music. Most definitely we have done so. So let's get together and create that force.
Maxine, any poignant lessons that you have learned?
Well, I think we need to, as Elizabeth says, understand our collective responsibility with regards to our individual success. As an individual, as you become successful, you need to be conscious that you're successful because of the collective experience of our creative industry and what inspires us to be creative. We're generally struggling, we're coming out of a experience where we have proved our resilience and we're growing. And I think if we, just from what I'm experiencing from Elizabeth and what, even within my Rastafari thought processes and political thought processes about us as a people, that we will have, nature will give us these individual achievements and has given us, and we have a huge history of individual achievements. But if we study, all of these individual achievements come out of the collective base that is more often than not struggling. So I would love ones to be successful as individuals, but look within their success to where they channel, as Michelle is doing, by going back to a university and, studying to get more knowledge on top of the success. He could only be doing that because he wants to give back to the collective, So that is what I would champion, that, be competitive and become successful. But remember where we're all coming from.
Be competitive while being cooperative.
While being cooperative.
Pat, you have the last word.
Well, I would just like to say, as an American who spends a lot of time in the Caribbean and has been doing it for decades now and writing about the music, of course, I would just like to see each island, but especially Jamaica and Trinidad, the two places that I have spent the most time, fully value what they have, these indigenous beautiful sounds that have produced these incredible legacies, these incredible artists. Yeah, they might not be on the top of the Billboard 100, but there are many metrics for looking at success, and that's just one of them. If you're an artist, if you're touring, if you're supporting yourself, that is success, and that is tremendous. And to just know that you're carrying with you that identity of where you come from. Yeah, we all have different influences. I mean, I'm a prime example of having different influences. Sure, and I know that music in 2023 is not necessarily going to sound like music from 1995. I totally get that. But always carry that special thing that makes you uniquely Jamaican, you uniquely Trinidadian, and then whatever else you take with it, fine. But I would just love to see these musics gain more of their rightful place in the wider music spectrum internationally.
We're right on time. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Montano, Patricia Machino, and of course, Maxine Stowe. This has been Musically Speaking. Clyde Mckenzie thanking you. Kevin is here. Danelia Doyle is here. My son is here, Claude. Yeah. and Zuri and Joel, they're here too. This has been a wonderful program. We had quite a discussion about some real important and touchy issues. Thank you so much for being here.
You're most
Thank
welcome.
you, Clyde.
It was a pleasure.